She looked right at the hotel clerk and snapped, "Don't talk to the old lady, she's just the maid." That old lady was me. I'm Maggie, and I never imagined my own daughter-in-law would humiliate me on a family vacation. But what she didn't know is, I had my own truth to reveal. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, how would you respond? I had been looking forward to this trip for months, clinging to it like a promise. At 72, I didn't get many chances to spend uninterrupted time with my son Daniel, his wife Olivia, and my grandchildren. When Daniel called and suggested a family vacation at Clearwater Beach, my heart swelled in a way I hadn't felt for years. Maybe this would be the week where Olivia finally let me in, where I wasn't the outsider tagging along, but a grandmother, a mother, a part of them. I packed carefully, folding sundresses with the precision of someone who still believed order could hold back chaos. Into my bag, I tucked my cracked porcelain mug wrapped in a dish towel, a silly habit I had developed after years of travel. Coffee just didn't taste right in strange cups, and this one, with its thin gold rim and faint fracture down the side, grounded me wherever I went. The drive from Tampa took just under 2 hours, though it felt longer. I sat in the back seat while Daniel drove and Olivia scrolled on her phone. They discussed spa appointments, golf reservations, and dinner spots as if I weren't there. Every so often, I tried to join in, suggested maybe we could all play cards with the kids in the evenings or visit the pier together. Olivia's answers were clipped. "We'll see," or "Maybe, but the kids have their routines." Daniel just kept his eyes on the road, nodding along with her plans. It reminded me of the first time I saw him shrink into himself, years ago, when he was 8. He had thrown his arms around me after blowing out the candles on his birthday cake and whispered, "You're all I need, Mom." That boy had looked at me as though I was his anchor. I clung to that memory as I sat silently in the back seat, while the man he had become seemed not to notice me at all. The Ocean View Resort rose ahead like a palace I knew intimately but kept secret. Every detail of the marble floors, the soaring crystal chandeliers, the perfectly landscaped entrance carried a piece of my life's work. Yet to Daniel and Olivia, it was just another luxury escape, one they had no idea I owned. Watching the valets move with crisp precision, I felt both pride and longing. I wanted to tell them, this is mine. I built this place from scratch, but I had always kept business and family separate. I wanted my son to love me for myself, not for what I could provide. We walked into the lobby together, Olivia adjusting her designer sunglasses, Daniel carrying nothing more than his phone in his hand. The humid Florida air clung to my skin, and the hum of conversation filled the polished space. Families with excited children checked in, laughter echoing beneath the chandeliers. I gripped the handle of my suitcase, trying to appear casual. At the front desk stood Sarah Mitchell, the manager I had promoted years ago. Her eyes widened briefly when she saw me, but I gave her the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. I wasn't ready to reveal anything. "Reservation for Whitman," Daniel said smoothly, tapping his phone on the counter as if it were a magic wand. Sarah typed quickly, professional smile intact. "Yes, Mr. Whitman, we have you booked for a deluxe ocean view suite." Olivia leaned across the counter, her nails clicking against the polished surface. No, that's wrong. We specifically asked for the penthouse." Sarah glanced at the screen again, her posture unyielding. "I'm afraid the penthouse is occupied, ma'am. The deluxe suite is—" "That's unacceptable!" Olivia snapped, her voice slicing through the chatter around us. "Do you know who we are? We always stay in penthouses." Guests nearby turned to watch. I shifted closer, hoping to diffuse her fury. "Olivia, maybe we could—" That's when it happened. Olivia spun on me, eyes sharp as glass. Her words cracked through the lobby, louder than any chandelier's sparkle. "Don't talk to the old lady. She's just the maid." It was as if the air left my lungs. Conversations halted. A child holding an inflatable dolphin froze mid-bounce. My cheeks burned, but before I could even find words, Daniel's laugh split the silence. Not a nervous chuckle, not embarrassment, but a full-bodied laugh that shook his shoulders. "Oh, Liv," he said between breaths, wiping at his eyes. "You're terrible, but you're not wrong." The humiliation pressed down like a weight. I thought of that 8-year-old boy clutching me at his birthday, calling me all he needed. I searched his face now for any trace of that child, but found only a man eager to appease his wife by laughing at his mother. Sarah's face paled behind the desk. Around us, guests whispered, some holding up phones to record. A woman near the elevators mouthed, "Oh my God," to her husband. Olivia waved a hand toward Sarah. "Don't listen to her. She's nobody. Just make sure she doesn't get in the way of our plans." I stood frozen, gripping the handle of my suitcase so tightly the plastic edge dug into my palm. My cracked mug rattled inside the bag, a tiny tremor echoing my own trembling. For a moment, I wanted to disappear, to melt into the polished marble and let them forget I existed. But something old and stubborn stirred inside me, the same grit that had built this very hotel. I forced my back straight, lifted my chin, and without a word, rolled my suitcase toward the elevator. My steps echoed, sharp against the marble. Each one steadied me. At the elevator, I turned just enough to see Sarah's eyes locked on mine. She gave a subtle nod, her lips pressed together in silent solidarity. It was a promise. This wasn't over. The doors closed around me, cutting off Olivia's complaints and Daniel's laughter. Alone in the quiet hum of the elevator, I felt both shattered and sharpened. The humiliation was raw, but underneath it pulsed something I hadn't felt in years, an ember of resolve. At breakfast the next morning, I reached toward Ella, my granddaughter, to smooth down the flyaway curl that had sprung free from her braid. Before my fingers could touch her hair, Olivia's manicured hand shot out, blocking mine. "Don't!" she said sharply, her voice clipped enough for nearby tables to hear. "You'll ruin it. She just had it done yesterday." I pulled my hand back as though I'd brushed against a hot pan. Ella didn't even look up from the tablet propped against the juice glass in front of her. Daniel cleared his throat but kept his eyes fixed on his phone, his thumbs tapping rhythmically. The smell of syrup and coffee hung in the air, mingling with the sound of vacation chatter from other families who seemed to inhabit a world I couldn't touch. I poured black coffee into my cracked porcelain mug, the one I had brought from home wrapped in a dish towel. The hairline fractured down its side caught the light, reminding me of resilience, flawed but unbroken. I tried to focus on that as Olivia launched into her demands. "Fresh orange juice," she told David, the young waiter assigned to our table. "Not concentrate. And don't even think about bringing me those scrambled eggs unless they're exactly 3 minutes. I can tell the difference." David nodded, pen steady in his hand, though the strain around his eyes betrayed him. He looked barely 20, his black hair neatly combed, his apron crisp. I had trained employees like him for years, kind, attentive, determined to please despite impossible requests. "Kids, say good morning to Grandma," Daniel said half-heartedly, still scrolling. "Morning," they mumbled in unison, eyes glued to their screens. The restaurant buzzed with families laughing, stacking pancakes onto plates, pouring syrup for children who clapped their sticky hands in delight. Our table felt sterile by comparison. Olivia perched like royalty in the chair by the window with the ocean view. Daniel absorbed in his phone, the kids lost in digital worlds. I sat opposite the window, staring at the back of a stranger's Hawaiian shirt. "After breakfast, you'll take them to the pool," Olivia said without glancing at me. "Reapply sunscreen every hour. Ella burns easily. If she gets pink, you'll answer to me." Her voice had the finality of an employer instructing staff. "And don't let them eat any of those poolside snacks. They're full of preservatives." She paused to sip her coffee. "Keep them away from the deep end. And if they need anything at all, you call me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself." The words sliced at me, each one a reminder that in Olivia's eyes I was untrustworthy, incapable, a burden. Daniel just scrolled, nodding absently. "Of course," I said quietly, the bitterness sharp on my tongue. By late morning, the Florida sun pressed heavy and hot, and I found myself at the resort's poolside, watching Ella and Jake splash without looking back at me. The scent of chlorine and sunscreen clung to the humid air. Parents around me called out encouragement to children, snapped photos, ordered drinks. I tried to strike up conversation with Ella and Jake, but they barely acknowledged me. When Ella finally did, her words cut deeper than I expected. She paddled over to the shallow ledge, her goggles dripping. Grandma, she said, wiping water from her eyes. Mom says you used to clean houses for rich people. Is that true? The question stunned me. I opened my mouth, closed it, then forced a smile. No, sweetheart. I built hotels. I didn't clean them for anyone else. I created places for families like this one. Before she could respond, Jake chimed in, his voice older, edged with skepticism. Mom says you make up stories about being rich. She says you're embarrassed about being poor, so you tell us these fairy tales. The air thickened. I felt my chest tighten, as though someone had placed a weight on it. That isn't true, I said softly. I've worked very hard my whole life. I wanted to give your father, and both of you, the best I could. Jake shrugged, already losing interest, retreating back toward the diving board. The wound, though, had been inflicted. They didn't believe me. They had been taught not to. I reached for Ella's cheek to wipe away a streak of sunscreen dripping down, but she jerked her head back instinctively. Mom doesn't like when you touch me, she muttered, and turned toward the pool ladder. The sting lingered longer than the Florida sunburn ever could. Hours passed, each one slower than the last. Other families lounged together, laughing and sharing stories. I sat stiffly in a deck chair, trying not to wilt under the weight of invisibility. Occasionally, David passed by delivering trays of fries and sodas to happier groups. Once, as he cleared glasses from the table beside me, he paused. Are you okay, ma'am? He asked quietly, his brown eyes flickering with concern. I forced a small smile. I'm fine, thank you. He nodded, though I could see he didn't believe me. His kindness, brief and unasked for, landed deeper than any word from my own family that day. Late in the afternoon, while Ella and Jake splashed near the shallow end, Olivia's voice carried across the pool deck. I looked up, startled, realizing she was behind the hedge of palms, speaking into her phone. I know, she was saying with an exaggerated sigh. Just a few more days of babysitting duty. Once this is sorted, we'll never deal with her again. The words hit me harder than the morning's humiliation. Babysitting duty? Not family? Not vacation? Just a chore she was tolerating until she no longer had to. I turned back to the pool, staring at the children who bore my blood, but looked at me as though I were a stranger. My coffee mug sat beside me on the lounge table, a dark ring staining the napkin beneath it. Cracked, chipped, enduring. Like me. The sky deepened to orange as the sun sank toward the Gulf. Around us, families gathered their towels, promising ice cream cones before bedtime. I sat frozen in my chair, realizing with a clarity that burned more than the sun. I wasn't on vacation at all. I was hired help, paying for the privilege. I froze when I heard Olivia's voice drift out from behind the striped fabric of the poolside cabana. She won't last more than 5 years anyway. I hadn't meant to overhear. I had been walking slowly around the resort's pool deck, letting the late afternoon humidity press against my skin like a damp blanket, trying to distract myself from the ache in my chest. Families laughed over cocktails, cicadas buzzed in the palms, and the sound of margarita glasses clinking floated in the air. Then her voice reached me, sharp as a needle. I stopped, hidden just behind a potted hibiscus. My heart hammered. The fabric walls of the cabana swayed slightly in the sea breeze, and through the thin material, voices carried. Daniel, I'm serious, Olivia said. She's old, and old people don't live forever. 5 years, 10 at the most. We just have to wait it out. I gripped the stem of the palm tree beside me, its bark rough under my fingers. A man's chuckle followed. I didn't recognize it. A stranger's voice. Amused, almost entertained. You're terrible, Olivia, the woman with him replied. Olivia laughed lightly, the same laugh she used in restaurants to charm waiters into free desserts. Practical, not terrible. Once she's gone, everything's ours. Daniel's an only child, no competition. The only question is how long we have to keep babysitting this little charade. Babysitting, that word again. And then Daniel's voice cut through me like broken glass. Don't worry, she's broke as hell anyway. Lives off Social Security. I pay her bills. She wouldn't survive without us. The palm tree blurred before my eyes. My own son, my Daniel, telling strangers I was dependent on him, that I was nothing, that I lived on scraps while he carried me. Olivia added, "She thinks she owns hotels, tells these ridiculous stories like she's some kind of business mogul. Honestly, it's embarrassing. Poor thing is probably losing it." The woman giggled. The man chimed in. "Dementia, maybe?" "Maybe," Daniel said. "Or maybe just desperate to feel important." The laughter that followed sliced me deeper than any insult. I pressed my back to the palm trunk, fighting the wave of nausea rising inside me. My husband's voice whispered from the past, steady, practical, the way he always was when he paid bills at the kitchen table. "Keep every receipt. Paper never lies." I could almost see him hunched over the shoebox of envelopes, teaching 12-year-old Daniel the difference between a check stub and a receipt. Paper never lies. My son had learned that lesson once. Somewhere along the way, he'd unlearned it. The conversation inside the cabana rolled on, crueler still. "She still thinks we brought her here because we want her," Olivia sneered. "She has no idea she's just here to watch the kids. Once this is sorted, we won't ever have to deal with her again. Not when she starts needing care. She's going straight into a state facility. I'm not turning my house into a nursing home." My knees trembled. I clutched the room key card in my pocket, its smooth plastic edges pressing against my palm. For years, those cards had been symbols of welcome, of belonging. Guests delighted to unlock doors I had provided. Now I realized they also symbolized control. Access could be given, and it could be taken away. I stumbled back from the cabana, forcing myself to move slowly so no one would notice. I couldn't let them see me like this, shaking, gutted, unraveling. I crossed the pool deck, my sandals slapping against the wet concrete, until I reached the cool shadow of the elevator. Inside my room, the air conditioning hummed, but I felt no relief. I sank onto the bedspread, staring at the folder I had tucked in my suitcase. For years, I had filed away financial statements, deeds, tax records. Not out of paranoia, but out of habit, my husband's voice always in my head. Paper never lies. On the nightstand, my cracked coffee mug sat waiting. I lifted it, tracing the thin fracture with my thumb. "Not yet broken," I whispered, clutching it like a talisman. Grief gave way to anger. Anger hardened into resolve. I pulled my phone from my purse and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in too long. "Richard Carter," a steady voice answered after 2 rings. "My lawyer, my old ally." "It's Maggie," I said, my voice low but sure. "I need to know what can be done if authorized family members misuse credit cards. Hypothetically." A pause, then his voice sharpened. "That's a serious question, Maggie. Are you telling me this is happening?" "I'm telling you I'm tired of being used, and I'm done waiting for respect that isn't coming." He exhaled slowly. "Then we'll start with proof. Keep everything. Don't confront them yet. Document, document, document." After we hung up, I laid the phone on the bedspread beside the folder. The last rays of the Florida sun spilled across the room, painting everything in orange and pink. Outside, the Gulf swallowed the light, endless and indifferent. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay listening to the hum of the air conditioner, the muffled laughter of vacationers drifting up from the pool, the distant whine of a jet ski cutting across the Gulf. Every sound reminded me that life for others carried on, carefree, while mine felt as though it were collapsing inward. I thought about Daniel at 8 years old, crouched on the carpet with toy soldiers lined up in neat rows, calling me his hero. I thought about the dandelions he once handed me, grubby stems dripping water from a jar he'd stolen from the kitchen. "Sunshine flowers," he had called them, so proud. How had that boy grown into the man whose voice had branded me useless, delusional, a burden? The memories played against the cracked coffee mug sitting sentinel on the nightstand. I reached for it again, holding it against my chest like a shield. Its flaw, that faint fissure running down the side, hadn't stopped it from doing its job. It reminded me that imperfection did not mean defeat. When I finally drifted into a shallow doze, I dreamed of paper. Not people, not voices, just endless receipts fluttering down like snow, covering the marble lobby, the pool deck, the cabana where they plotted, receipts that whispered, "We remember, we don't lie." By morning, my eyes were gritty, but my mind felt sharper. I ordered black coffee from room service, poured it into my mug, and sipped slowly, tasting both bitterness and resolve. If Olivia and Daniel wanted to cast me as a helpless old woman, I would let them, for now. But while they underestimated me, I would be gathering proof. Every signature, every charge, every careless slip of the tongue they thought vanished into the humid Florida air. I would keep it, because paper never lies. I pressed the folder flat against the bed, my palm resting on it like a vow. Tomorrow, I would begin collecting every shred of evidence. No more hoping they would love me the way I loved them. No more waiting. The truth had been spoken behind cabana walls, and I had heard it. Now it was my turn. Sarah still slid a discreet folder across her desk. "Mrs. Hayes, you'll want to see this." I stared at the manila edges for a long moment, the weight of it heavier than any leather-bound ledger I'd ever signed. In my hand, the cracked coffee mug was still warm with the last of the hotel's bitter drip. Steam curled upward, trembling, the way my heart had for days. That small flaw in porcelain had become my anchor. I breathed in, and only then let my fingers brush the folder. The office smelled of strong coffee and faint printer ink. Outside the windows, the Gulf stretched gray under a low morning sky. Clearwater was waking up. Families in flip-flops chattering in the lobby, the rustle of newspapers, the clink of spoons on bowls of fruit. None of them knew the war quietly beginning upstairs. I opened the folder. 17 separate complaints, each typed in Sarah's neat reports. Olivia's voice echoed in my head as I read. "The towels aren't folded properly. The orange juice tastes like concentrate. The sweet doesn't smell expensive enough." The words looked almost childish on the page, yet each complaint had a date, a time, and Daniel's signature scribbled underneath. My son's name in black ink, my son's agreement to her cruelty. I traced one page with the edge of my thumb, half hoping the letters would blur into something else, something gentler. But paper never lies. My late husband had said that when we were still paying bills at a plastic kitchen table. I remembered him shoving receipts into envelopes, muttering, "Keep every slip, Mags. One day, it might save you." A knock broke my trance. David Lopez leaned in, his waiter's apron wrinkled from the breakfast rush. He looked nervous until Sarah nodded. "Come in, Mrs. Hayes," he began, lowering his voice. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but the staff, we all know who you are. We've seen how they treat you, and it doesn't sit right. Not with any of us." The words caught in my throat. I hadn't realized how starved I'd become for simple decency. "Thank you, David," I whispered. He shifted, glancing at the folder on the desk. "If you need more, if you want statements. I've seen her send back 3 meals in a row, yelling at a cook half her age, and last night, she snapped at a housekeeper until she cried. We write it all down, ma'am. We notice." My chest swelled with both pride and ache. The loyalty of these strangers, this quiet army in uniforms, contrasted so sharply with the betrayal at my own table. "Keep noting everything," I told him, steadying my voice. "Details matter." After he left, I sat with Sarah in silence, papers spread like cards in a deck no one wanted to play. "Mrs. Hayes," Sarah said carefully, "may I ask, what do you plan to do?" I closed the folder with a soft snap. "Enough." That single word seemed to settle in the room, heavier than the folder itself. Back in my suite, I dialed Richard Carter, my lawyer. The line clicked, and his familiar gravel voice answered. "Maggie, been a while." "Richard," I said, steady now, "if a family member misuses credit cards in my name, what's my recourse?" A pause, then, "Are we talking hypothetical, or should I be sharpening my pencils?" I looked down at the receipts I'd gathered from my purse, each one with Daniel's easy scrawl. Spa treatments, boutique shopping, golf outings, all charged to my accounts. Let's just say, start sharpening. For 30 minutes, Richard laid out the framework: fraud, elder financial abuse, misuse of accounts, legal remedies. His voice was crisp, practical, grounding me in statutes and options instead of heartbreak. By the time I hung up, My desk was littered with sticky notes and underlined pages. A battlefield mapped in ink. I slid everything into a single folder. Sarah's reports, David's testimony, receipts, my own notes. The folder felt solid under my arm, the first shield I'd held in years. Later that morning, on my way back through the hallway, I passed Olivia outside our floor's housekeeping cart. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "These towels aren't folded in thirds. Do them again. Do you people not understand luxury?" The young housekeeper flushed red, fumbling with linen. I walked by slowly, the folder pressed against my ribs, and for the first time all week, I didn't shrink. I didn't apologize for her. I simply walked, silent, calm, my proof rustling inside the folder like an unseen choir. In my suite, I poured fresh coffee into the cracked mug and stared out at the Gulf. Waves rolled in and broke, over and over. Time had always been measured here in tides. But for me, the clock had started ticking towards something else. I touched the folder's spine. "Enough," I whispered again. That evening, Clearwater buzzed with the easy music of vacation. Children squealing in the pool, clatter of crab legs in buckets, neon lights humming to life. But I felt outside of it, perched on my balcony. Below, I could see Daniel and Olivia at the bar, laughing with a new couple as if the world belonged to them. Her white linen romper glowed under the patio lights. Daniel's laugh rose and fell, practiced and hollow. They didn't see me. I didn't expect them to. But I saw them. Every careless toss of Olivia's hair, every nod of Daniel's complicity. They were performing. Tomorrow, the curtain would fall. I ran a fingertip over the line in my mug, still holding together despite the crack. Not broken? Not yet. I tucked the folder beneath my arm as I left Sarah's office. By tomorrow night, the whole charade would end. "Take the children out, Norma," Olivia said sweetly, her voice pitched high for the guests gathered around the long table. She always performed when she had an audience. Her hand floated through the air like a conductor's baton, dismissing me without meeting my eyes. I didn't move toward the door. Instead, I rose slowly, slipping behind her chair. My purse pressed against my hip. Inside it, the key card I had held onto from that first week rested against the folder of papers, an unremarkable piece of plastic. But tonight, it felt like the symbol of everything I was reclaiming. Keys meant access, and access meant power. The Sunset Terrace dining room glittered with everything Olivia craved: attention, indulgence, admiration. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, scattering light across the room. White linen tablecloths stretched taut over polished mahogany. Lobster shells cracked open on porcelain plates, golden butter dripping down the sides. Chardonnay swirled in crystal glasses. Beyond the wide windows, the Gulf darkened into streaks of violet and fire, the horizon pulsing with the last light of day. Around the table sat 6 other resort guests, Olivia's chosen audience. They leaned forward eagerly, drawn to her laughter, nodding at her stories. She had introduced Daniel as the successful businessman, herself as the cultured hostess, and me, just moments before, as Norma, helping with the kids. I stood at her shoulder, steadying my breath. My cracked coffee mug wasn't with me, but I carried its lesson, not yet broken. "I think it's time for honesty," I said, my voice level but firm enough to cut through the clinking of silverware. The table hushed. A lobster claw dropped back onto a plate with a dull thud. Someone cleared their throat. Olivia laughed, brittle as glass. "Oh, Norma, don't be dramatic. Let's not interrupt dinner." But I had already slipped the first document from my folder and laid it on the table in front of her plate. The bold header gleamed under the chandelier. Hayes Properties, Incorporated. Gasps circled the table. Guests craned their necks to read. Olivia blinked, confused at first, then pale. I laid down another paper, then another. Deeds, statements, receipts. The stack grew, a mosaic of proof spilling across the white linen. Daniel's face blanched. "Mom," he whispered hoarsely, "what are you doing?" "I'm correcting the record," I replied. My voice was calm, measured, like a woman adjusting a place setting. I tapped a page where his hurried signature sprawled at the bottom of a bar receipt. This drink order? Charged to my account? The golf outing? Also me. And the spa visits Olivia bragged about at breakfast? Paid with my credit. Olivia's hands clenched the stem of her wineglass. This is absurd, she snapped, darting her gaze around the table. She's confused. She's old. She makes things up. Her hand trembled and the glass tipped, crimson wine cascading across the tablecloth. The stains spread like a bloom of blood, dark and undeniable, seeping into the folds of white linen. The guests recoiled. One leaned toward another, whispering, "But she said that's her mother-in-law?" Across from me, Ella and Jake stared wide-eyed, forks frozen midair. Ella's lips parted, but she said nothing. Jake dropped his gaze quickly to his plate, shoulders tight. Olivia dabbed at the spreading stain with her napkin, her smile crumbling. "Daniel, stop her! Say something!" Daniel rubbed his temple, his jaw working furiously. We didn't... The words tangled in his throat. His eyes darted to me, then to the guests, as if searching for the boy he used to be, but unable to find him. I laid one more page flat on the table, a bank statement that bore both of their signatures. "This," I said softly, "is what fraud looks like. And this," I gestured around us, "is what betrayal feels like." The air grew heavy. Even the servers froze at the periphery of the room, their trays suspended in midair. I straightened, my purse still at my side. I didn't come here to ruin dinner. I came here to tell the truth, and I didn't come alone. The heavy doors at the far end of the dining room opened. "Mrs. Hayes?" a calm baritone called. Detective Alan Morrison stepped in, two plainclothes officers just behind him. His presence shifted the air. Conversation collapsed into silence. The clink of silverware halted. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their light still. Olivia's chair scraped violently against the polished floor as she jumped up. "This is insane! Who are you? Who called you?" "I did," I said simply, turning toward him. "Detective, thank you for coming." Olivia whirled, her manicured hand pointing at me, nails flashing under the light. "She's delusional. She's trying to humiliate us. You can't just storm into our dinner." Detective Morrison didn't flinch. "We were contacted with evidence of financial fraud. Mrs. Hayes, may we see the documents?" I gathered the papers from the table with deliberate calm, sliding them back into the folder before handing it across. The guests craned to watch, their faces a theater of astonishment, curiosity, pity, and awe all mingling. Daniel half rose from his chair, his face flushed. "Mom, please, we can settle this privately. Don't do this to us." "Settle?" My voice stayed steady, though my heart thudded like a drum. "You settled it when you signed my name on those receipts. You settled it when you laughed while she called me a maid." The red stain of wine spread wider across the table, the linen ruined. Olivia pressed a napkin hard against it, as if she could erase the evidence bleeding out in front of everyone. "This is a mistake," Daniel pleaded, turning to the detective now. "She's confused. She's not—" Morrison raised a hand. "Sir, we have enough to open an inquiry. You'll both have the opportunity to respond." Olivia's voice rose to a shriek. "Inquiry? This is outrageous! We've done nothing wrong!" Her shrill tone bounced off the marble walls, a jagged contrast to my own evenness. I stood straighter, smoothing my blouse, my purse strapped snug on my shoulder. "I didn't call the police on family," I said, my words deliberate, clear enough for every person in the room to hear. "I called the police on fraud." For a long beat, silence held. Guests looked back and forth between us, their lobster and butter forgotten. The waiters shifted nervously, unsure if they should stay or slip out the side door. Olivia clutched Daniel's arm now, desperate. "Say something! Fix this!" But Daniel only stared at the folder in Detective Morrison's hands, his shoulders collapsing. He knew. He had always known this day would come once the truth had a voice. Then his head snapped toward me, rage overtaking the panic. His lips twisted, his eyes sharp with venom. "You vindictive old woman!" he spat, his voice raw enough to scrape the room. "You've destroyed us." The words hung there, bitter and jagged, and for once in my life, I wasn't afraid. 3 months later, I unlocked the glass door to the Hayes Foundation office. the Florida sun glinting off the etched letters of my name. Margaret Hayes Foundation for Dignity in Aging. Seeing it in gold lettering against the clear pane nearly took my breath away. For decades, my name had been hidden in contracts, property deeds, tucked in folders only lawyers and bankers ever read. Now it was here. Visible, unashamed, welcoming anyone who entered. Inside, the air smelled faintly of fresh paint and strong coffee. A vase of sunflowers stood on the reception desk, their bright faces tilted toward the light. On my new desk sat the same cracked coffee mug I had carried across so many miles. Once it had been a private reminder of endurance. Now it stood openly, no longer fragile, but a symbol of survival. Visitors sometimes noticed the fracture and asked why I kept it. I would smile and say, because it still holds. The months since that dinner had been a storm, then a slow clearing. Daniel and Olivia's downfall played out in the quiet pages of court documents and the loud whispers of Tampa's social circles. Fraud charges had stripped away their home, their privileges, the reputation Olivia prized. Olivia had vanished quickly, remarried a year later in another state. Her name disappeared from invitations, her face from glossy society pages. Daniel stayed behind, shadowed, reduced. I heard from Richard that he rented a small apartment and worked for a construction company that paid weekly in cash. I did not see him, but one day, a plain envelope arrived at the office. Inside was a handwritten letter. Mom, I can't undo what I did. I was weak, I followed where I should have stood, and I failed you. I don't ask for forgiveness, but I ask for a chance to be a son again someday. I set the letter in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not discarded, not answered, just waiting. While they unraveled, I rebuilt. With Richard's guidance, the assets reclaimed from their misuse funded the Hayes Foundation. Our mission was clear: protect older adults from financial abuse and give them tools to stand tall. Our first retreat was held in the very dining room where Olivia once presided, dripping disdain into every word. The chandeliers still glowed, but the tables now bore bagels, steaming carafes of coffee, bowls of fresh fruit. Instead of whispers, laughter rose as seniors shared stories, counselors guided them through group discussions, and volunteers scribbled notes for follow-up. I walked among them, shaking hands, listening, nodding. The space that had once humiliated me now hummed with resilience. Sarah Mitchell stood at my side, now promoted to general manager of the entire resort. Full circle, isn't it? She whispered. I nodded. Better than full circle. Forward. She smiled, and I felt proud, not just of her, but of the invisible threads of loyalty that had stitched this together. Then came Jake. He was 13 now, taller, shoulders beginning to stretch into manhood. He arrived with Richard one humid afternoon, clutching a backpack and a folded paper. His eyes darted around the office before landing on me. Hi, Grandma, he said softly. My throat tightened. I opened my arms, and he stepped into them, the awkwardness of adolescence colliding with the tenderness of memory. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I just breathed him in, the faint scent of chlorine, pencil shavings, the world of a boy still learning who he would become. He handed me the folded paper. It's an essay for the Foundation's scholarship program. I didn't want special treatment, so I used the online portal like everyone else, but I wanted you to see it. I unfolded it. In his careful handwriting, he had written, My grandmother taught me that being strong doesn't mean being loud. It means standing when no one believes you. She showed me what dignity looks like. She showed me who I want to be. Tears blurred the words. I reached for his hand. Jake, you were never to blame. You are exactly who you're meant to be. His grip tightened, and for the first time in years, I felt the simple truth of family, the kind built not on obligation, but on choice. Later that week, the phone rang. The line crackled, then a tentative voice whispered, Grandma? It was Ella. She didn't say much, just that she missed me, that she wasn't ready to visit yet. But she called. That was enough. At sunset, Jake and I drove to Clearwater Beach. We sat side by side on the boardwalk, paper cups of ice cream melting faster than we could eat. The gulf stretched out before us, waves rolling in steady rhythm. "Are you happy now?" he asked quietly. I looked at him, the horizon burning orange, the wind tugging his hair. Happiness isn't something you arrive at, Jake. It's something you build, and yes, I'm building it. As the sun slipped below the water, I rested my hand on his shoulder. For years I had feared solitude, had confused being alone with being unloved. But as the light faded and Jake leaned against me, I realized the truth. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. I was never alone, not really. As I sat beside Jake watching the sun slip into the gulf, I realized that some cracks don't break us. They let the light in. Life has taught me this simple truth. Family lasts only when there is respect, and real love never arrives too late. Even in hard seasons, love has a way of finding its way back if we're willing to open our hearts. If this story touched you, I invite you to share your thoughts or a memory of your own, because sometimes one reflection can warm another person's heart.